Blog Talk Radio.
Paranormal Review Radio.
Hello and welcome, everyone. It's Friday night and you're listening to Paranormal Review Radio with your hosts, Anthony Agati in New York.
And Lucy Liebfried from Chicago.
Lucy, let's tell everyone how they can join in tonight.
Okay. Well, as always, our phone lines are open, so give us a call. But tonight we expect you to call us. The number to call is 661-244-9831. If you wish to talk to us, press 1 after calling the number. And if you wish just to listen to the show on your phone, stay on the line. We have our chat room up and running, so feel free to ask us a question or stir up a debate in the room. You can also send us an email at paranormalreviewradio@yahoo.com and check us out on Facebook.
There's an eerie experience that just about everyone has had more than once. You walk into a room or find yourself in a conversation, and suddenly you have the overwhelming sense, even though you know it's impossible, that you've been here before. Psychologists call it Deja Vu, already seen in French, but despite the phenomenon's universal familiarity, no one has offered a convincing explanation for why it happens. Our guest tonight has co-authored a book called The Deja Vu Enigma, a journey through the anomalies of mind, memory, and time, where not only is the phenomenon explained in many different levels, but also touches on contagious thought, curses, demonic possession, and mass hysteria, to name a few. Marie D. Jones is a best-selling author of over a dozen books on the metaphysical and paranormal field. She is currently writing a screenplay for a science fiction feature film called Twilight Child, as well as a horror film with Bruce Lucas Productions. Marie has also been a field investigator for 15 years within Mutual UFO Network in Los Angeles and San Diego. She's also the co-host of a popular radio show on Dreamland and serves as the Director of Special Projects for ARPAS, the Arkansas Paranormal and Anomalous Studies Team. Marie's list of projects and positions go on and on. Please welcome Marie D. Jones to the show. Hello, Marie. How are you tonight?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
You know, I just have to ask you, how do you find time to relax with all that you have going on with the books and projects and films?
I don't. It's that simple. I don't know how to do that.
I mean, I'm out of breath just reading your intro.
Oh, God. I keep telling people, I'm going to go to Tahiti for a couple of weeks and just not do anything. And, I can, because I write full time, I can take time off whenever I feel like it, but I just can't do it. An hour will go by and I'll be itching to just go work on something. But it's nice because I have the freedom to work on it when I feel like. So that helps. But, I don't know how to relax. I need to write a book.
Yeah.
How to shut off the brain. Where's the switch?
Yeah, right.
I want to find that switch.
Well, Marie, I want to welcome you to the show. Can I just say that I love all of your books. But you know what?
Thank
the
you.
Deja Vu Enigma intrigued me because so many people experience this, but yet we truly can't explain why it happens. Now that you've written this book, have you personally been convinced of one singular reason as to why we get deja vu?
I have, and there's no way to prove it. It's a theory. But when Larry and I were writing the book, we really wanted to write a book about the power of the human mind and what the mind and consciousness and even the brain, because, there are people who believe that the brain and the mind are two separate things, and there's a whole camp of people who think that they're the same. But we really wanted to explore what's in our heads, what goes on and how powerful it is. Deja vu is an experience that everybody can relate to. I don't think I've ever talked to anybody who hasn't had deja vu. But what do? We have it. We trivialize it, right? We say, oh, I just had deja vu. Ha, okay, whatever. And then we move on to the next thing. And I don't think people realize what may be going on here. For so long, scientists and medical researchers thought that it was some kind of memory glitch. And that is just not proven to be the case. The more that we research, the more that we learn about it. It seems like it's got a real underlying mystery to it.
Well, you know what? One of the theories that struck me as a paranormal investigator was the theory that you mentioned in the book by Hugh Everett regarding the many worlds theory. Can you share with our listeners what this is all about, and how does it relate to deja vu?
See, I like that one. That's the one that I sort of have taken to my heart, is the idea that deja vu is not just the brain screwing up. It's not, a little neural glitch or some kind of misfire in the brain. It happens to so many people. It happens naturally. We don't know what triggers it in a natural setting. And here's the thing. So many people report that when they have deja vu, they also may have some kind of precognitive information, like they can see into the future a little bit. And a lot of people report the opposite. They get a sort of past life flashback. So where is all of that coming from? Now, the many worlds theory and the multiverse and the idea of other realities and other dimensions and parallel universes, what this does is this brings in the possibility that deja vu is a glitch, but it's more of a glitch of us getting a glimpse of ourselves in another universe, getting a little 10 or 15-second peek of ourselves in a parallel universe or another reality where we're doing the exact same thing at the exact same time. Or in the case of past life or precognitive deja vu, we're seeing ourselves in another universe and another timeline. So it kind of gives it a little more of a metaphysical, and yet, it also kind of brings the whole idea of quantum physics into it, the idea that we may exist in these other universes, and every now and then we could be walking along or having lunch with a friend, and we get a little glimpse into us in that other universe when we have deja vu.
Okay. So, you know what? Exactly how much research did you and Larry Flaxman do in order to put this book together?
Oh, this was our third book together. We've done 5 books so far. And when we went into it, we knew it was going to be very, very research intensive because we were really taking on everything that has to do with memory and the mind and how we perceive reality and time. I think it took us about 6 or 7 months to write this book. And usually before we start writing, we work off of an outline. We know what our chapters are going to be. But it is just an incredible amount of reading and compiling research, getting it all organized, and then just really, also we like to get personal experiences from people because we always find that those are really fun to read. It's fun to read about the information and learn, but it's also fun to hear what other people experience. So it's, painstaking. It can be very grueling to write nonfiction books where you have to do so much research, but it really, really helps to know ahead of time where you're going. So then you kind of plot out your chapters and you just sort of accumulate the research for each chapter.
Can I just mention Anthony, can I just mention that your chapter titles are awesome. That's one thing that I really, really enjoy about your book.
All of the books that I've done and the books that I've done with Larry, we always do that. We play with our chapter titles. We just released a book on time travel, and every single chapter title is a song that has time in it, time passages or time will come today or whatever. So we always like to do that. I don't know how it started. Actually, it started with my first book. And it just we got to have, because it can be so research intensive and it can get really heavy. So it's we got to put some humor in here wherever we can.
Luckily,
the publisher's okay with it,
Well, it's perfect. I mean, it keeps the momentum going, and it just keeps you even that more interested. But I wanted to get back to the question that Lucy had about the research. Was there anything when you and Larry were doing this book, was there anything that you've researched and found that you didn't put in the book that you maybe felt was possibly maybe off the wall or really not interesting at all to write about?
No, not really. We're game to just include everything because we've kind of become known for writing books that cover every angle of a subject. And yes, we put our own personal opinion and spin in, but really what we want to do is present every possible angle, all of the different categories and things that we possibly can, so that when people pay money to buy one of our books, they're getting their money's worth. I know how hard it is to afford to just go out as a luxury and buy a bunch of books nowadays, although they're on Kindle too. But still, we want to feel like people are really going to get everything they can. The worst part of it is, though, when you turn the book in, never fails. Like 2 weeks after the book goes into production, some great scientific discovery or some story comes over the newswire about, some deja vu research, and it's too late to get that in, and that's where it gets really frustrating. So we try to get everything that we're aware of and that we know about.
And that's what's great about the book, The Deja Vu Enigma, is that you put out everything that I think could possibly explain what deja vu is, and you let the readers sort of make up their own mind. And I like that.
Right,
you're not sort of biased and completely, only give this one-sided view. You lay it out there so that everybody who's reading it will get a sense and pick out what sort of is familiar and comfortable to them. So I love it. I love the way that you did that book. But Marie, one of the funny points in your book that you compared deja vu to in the modern day reference to a brain fart, but there's actually a name for it called tip of the tongue syndrome. How is that like deja vu?
Well, okay, when you're talking to your friends and somebody says, remember that movie with Bruce Willis, and you've seen it 25,000 times, and all of a sudden you cannot remember the name of that dang movie, and it's just right on the tip of your tongue. It's in your brain. You've seen the movie 20 zillion times. It's implanted somewhere in your brain. Well, why can you not get it to the forefront of the brain so that you can verbalize it? And it's a real syndrome, and it's just so funny how there are actually, medical researchers and scientists researching tip of the tongue syndrome. And the reason why is because we want to better understand what is it about when we have memory issues. And those kinds of things, those kinds of discoveries can help with memory loss and Alzheimer's and things like that. So it's always for a reason. Tip of the tongue research does have a purpose, but it just is so funny and it's such a frustrating thing. Another thing that I can't stand is how, you're trying to come up with a really good idea for something, and you're really just sitting there thinking, and you can't come up with anything. 2 hours later, you're in the shower with no pencil, nothing to write down. You come up with a fully detailed plan, right?
Yes.
By the time you get out of the shower, you've forgotten half of it. And if we could get some kind of control over our brains and the recall of information, it would be great. I think we would.
Actually, there was one page or one part of the book in particular on page 62 where you had talked about, methods in the way to try and help retrieve the memory, and it was the reworking the method of Lucy and imagery. And I thought that was that was such a great thing to add in there, because not only is this an informative book about deja vu, but it actually gives you these little tips here to help you actually try and retrieve the memory, such as, the tip of the tongue syndrome type of things. Right. And I know in the book Larry had mentioned that the third one, imagery, was the one that really helped him. And I'm actually been trying that this week after I was reading it. And
I think it depends on what kind of a person you are, if you're good at visualizing.
Right. Does
Do you remember
age have anything to... I'm sorry, go ahead, Marie.
Do you remember back in elementary school when we were learning the planets? Did you guys?
Yes.
I grew up in New York, so we had that goofy saying. What was it? Mary Vincent eats.
Oh, that sentence, yes.
Do you remember that whole thing so that you could remember the order of the? Now I've forgotten it now.
And right now I can't remember it for the life of me.
Yeah, Mary Vincent eats. Oh God. See, what comes after Earth? Mars. Oh,
Mars?
Whatever. Jupiter. No, jelly sandwiches under. Oh, see, I mean,
you're better than
I'm
me.
an adult, but as a kid, that helped us learn the order of the planets, and that's one of these methods of trying to remember. You know, your wife gives you a shopping list of 20 items, and like a dummy, you leave it at home, and you don't have your phone, so she can't text it to you. You're trying to remember some of the items, and there's different ways that we can sharpen our memory, but how many people actually are going to go through these processes unless you absolutely have to? If you feel like you're reading.
I remember. Right, yeah. I mean, I remember as a kid, one of the things that helped me was to put the facts to music or some sort of rhyme, and to be able to recall the dates and the years and the names, and that completely helped me. And maybe it's just that repetition of it that I was able to retrieve it when I needed it, but I couldn't for the life of me now. I can't remember that.
And you're also making it fun by doing that. You're making a rote thing, a boring rote function. You're making it fun, so your brain kind of lights up and helps you to remember. Yeah, I remember doing that too. And ask me now if I remember any of those rhymes. But see, that's the thing. I mean, now that we're older, we have different things that we need to remember. We remember phone numbers, and although now, it's really, the next generation isn't going to need to memorize phone numbers because their phones are all programmed.
Technology.
But our generation, we had to memorize phone numbers, and we had to memorize addresses and whatnot, and now these kids, I swear they have it so easy. But you have to wonder what that's going to do to their brains, because are they not going to be as challenged to use their memory and improve their memory as much?
I don't mean to go off on a tangent, but I've heard that technology and the way that it is right now with, the smartphones and everything else that are just keeping the basic things that we try to keep in memory manually, I guess that's a correct word to add to this, that the technology will be able to keep that memory for us, and we won't have to worry or, painstakingly try and keep that memory. That it'll allow our brains to actually think. It'll actually allow our brains to think higher, on a higher level, on other things.
I hope so. I hope it doesn't.
I know. I'm hoping. I'm grabbing onto that.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? On
that, none of us think at all. It's like, wait, it's in my phone. My brain is in my phone.
Technology is kind of making us remember, because we have to remember passwords. At work, I have to change my password every 60 days. So remembering the password is probably the hardest part.
I know, and
I go old school.
Yeah,
I go old school with a pen and paper then.
Yeah. How funny. And again, I mean, anything that we can do like that is going to improve our brain, increase our brain power. So here we are allowing technology to make life so much easier for us, but we just have to make sure we don't cross that fine line where we lose the ability to do the things that we need to do. But like you said, I like that idea of allowing the brain to think higher thoughts. That might be a good thing.
I'm going to hold on to that theory.
Yeah, me too. I like
Marie,
that one.
Does age have anything to do with the frequency that someone experiences deja vu?
Well, what we've found is that the research, and when I say that, this is research that is on the record, that has been done in clinical settings, as people get older, they seem to have less deja vu. And we read and learned over and over again that children under the age of 7 to 9 don't have deja vu. Now, I disagree with that, because my feeling is what they're not addressing is the fact that children have all kinds of experiences. I know my son has, and they don't know how to verbalize them. So a child's not going to come up to you and say, "Oh, Mommy, Daddy, I just had deja vu." children, I mean, their brains are growing, they're active. I don't see a whole lot of, there's really no medical proof that kids don't have deja vu. It's more subjective in terms of, not having the reports that children do. But with older people, and we're talking people in their senior years, it does seem to decline, and I think it's because, obviously, it has to do with memory. The same parts of the brain are firing when someone has deja vu as would be when someone is trying to retrieve a memory. So it doesn't necessarily mean that deja vu is a memory glitch. It just means that similar parts of the brain are active for both retrieving memory and having deja vu. And we also found, this is really interesting, the more exhausted you are and the more educated you are, the more deja vu you have. Now, figure that one out. I mean, the education, who knows? Maybe, I don't know. But I can see the exhausted because I think people have a lot more paranormal experiences when they're tired and exhausted because I think really the left brain is kind of shutting down the analytical brain, and it's allowing the right brain to get a word in edgewise.
I agree with that. You're more relaxed. You're more open to the surroundings and to
you just sort of let it happen.
Right, exactly. Now, you were talking before about how, when you hand in the book to the publisher and then all of a sudden now there's sort of this news article or big breaking news about the topic.
It's so frustrating.
I recently found information from the UK medical journal, Cortex. It's a medical research team in the Czech Republic from the Central European Institute of Technology. And they had found, or they claim, that the part of the brain they actually found the part of the brain that is actually responsible for deja vu. And they said that they found this small structure within the, I think it was the medial temporal lobes. And they were these small structures or whatnot. But I think it was the piece itself or the structure itself was much smaller in folks who had a higher number of deja vu experiences as opposed to the patients who were not.
Right.
Yeah. Have you heard of this, or is this just a regurgitation of other medical stuff?
Well, the frontal lobe and the temporal lobe specifically have always been associated with deja vu. This very small part, I'm wondering if it's the circle of Willis, or there's a couple of different little bits of the brain that seem to be associated with deja vu. But obviously, what interests me is they find out the parts of the brain, they can trigger deja vu in a clinical setting. They can stimulate that particular part of the brain, and they have done this many, many times. But what they still need to tell us is how is it being stimulated in a natural and organic setting when you're just out and about. Right. What is happening to the brain where all of a sudden that part of the brain is being stimulated to have a deja vu experience? We also learned that it's the same general part of the brain that's responsible for grand mal seizures in epileptics. And during grand mal seizures, many epileptics report a sense of deja vu and an aura. They see an aura, and they have different visual and even auditory experiences, but they will also report deja vu. So that part of the brain there's something going on there. It's also the part of the brain associated with poltergeist activity. So it's like, whoa, okay, what's going on with the temporal lobe here? But yeah, I mean, it's just fascinating to me that there are people even looking now seriously trying to figure out what deja vu is, because I think that's great for all of the different anomalous or paranormal experiences that somebody's taking deja vu seriously. Well, could all of these other things that people are experiencing have something to do with the brain and the mind and consciousness, and can we start looking at those things seriously?
Right.
Well, you know what, Marie, on that note, in the book, there is a section called Believing in Believing, where you mentioned that the brain may be a factor in demonic possession. So does this mean that spirits and demons are not actually involved and very possibly could just all be in our mind? It's a possibility, and we're not saying that we know for sure what's going on, because I don't think anybody does. But, you know, so much in the paranormal, you hear people talk about demons and even ghosts and any other types of entities as being
physical, exterior, external manifestations, and they very well could be. However, there's so many reports and so much research that has been done, so many investigations where the people that are involved seem to be a very fundamental part of the experience. And Larry and I firmly believe that human beings are the common denominator in any kind of paranormal experience. You've got us. Our physiology is interacting with the environment somehow. I don't think that we are left out of the equation. So in terms of like demonic possession, it could very well be that there are external influences and forces and entities and beings, but it could also be that they're generated entirely from within our mind. That's the second theory. But then there's a third theory, that we are interacting, our physiology, our brains, our mind, our consciousness is interacting with the environment to be able to perceive something that you normally wouldn't see. So that's where we're kind of going with our research. I would never say that there's no such thing as a demon, but I lean heavily towards our role in manifesting them.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. Now, personally, I've experienced deja vu many times. Now, when I'm experiencing this, sometimes it seems like time has slowed down during this experience. Is there any significance to that?
Yes, there is, because what that means is that in addition to having deja vu, in addition to deja vu being a sort of mental experience where you kind of feel like you're in two places at once, there's also a temporal element. There's also an element of time distortion. And some people will report, the time slowing to a crawl. And you know what's funny? When you have deja vu, it probably only lasts a few seconds, but it feels like it lasts longer, and I've never, I've been able to a couple of times when I have deja vu kind of keep it going, but it's really difficult because it's kind of like the second you become aware you're having it, it stops. It's like the second you say to yourself, I'm having deja vu, boom, it's over, which implies a sort of conscious element. But a lot of people, again, have reported that sense of time distortion where they say they go on holiday to Greece and they go past, the ruins of something or other, and all of a sudden they're having heavy-duty deja vu, and they're getting a vision of that location 2,000 years ago, and they're in that location 2,000 years ago, and everything looks completely different. And boom, 5 seconds later, they're back in their present tense in the present body, and so on and so on. And then again, other people may have futuristic or precognitive elements to their deja vu. So there's some kind of time distortion going on when you're having deja vu. It's not just the sense that you're in two places at once, but maybe even two times at once.
Right. And you know what, that's so interesting because sometimes when it does happen, it's almost like you don't realize it has happened until it's done.
Right. And it would be so cool if while it was happening,
you could just stop and say, okay, wait, let me watch this.
Yeah, because it's like, okay, I want to research this. I need to write down what's happening, so I want to try to extend this to a half an hour, and it just does not happen. But there have been cases in, obviously, clinical laboratory settings where they've had people who, and they were not being researched for deja vu. They were doing memory research or some type of brain anomaly. And I think one gentleman was having deja vu for hours. And, you can't live that way. You can't, you can't. Obviously, he had some kind of brain malfunction. But could you imagine, if it did go on for longer than a minute, you'd probably just get so disoriented and dizzy and I don't know. Although at the same time, it would be really cool because then we could take a step back and observe what's going on here. How am I feeling? Start taking down some really good data that you could use later. But we just don't get that opportunity.
Now, you just mentioned like in a clinical setting, and you have mentioned in your book that deja vu has been triggered in a clinical setting. So is this the same? Is the experience the same, or does it seem to be different?
Well, they're triggering the same part of the brain, and usually when this happened, I do want to make it clear, usually when it happened, the research or what was happening at the time was not deja vu related. It always seems to be sort of a secondary thing that would occur. They're trying to figure out how to stimulate a deep massage in the brain of someone who has brain issues or a brain tumor or something, and then boom, they have deja vu. So it's always sort of like a side effect of other research. But so that's how they determine which parts of the brain are involved. But again, the problem is we still don't know, even though we know deja vu is real, because you can make somebody have deja vu. We don't know how it happens naturally when you're just out living your life. And I had it happen once when I was out to lunch with a friend, and then afterwards I was trying to think, well, what happened in the environment, or what was I was drinking iced tea, we were having like Japanese food. I mean, what happened that I would have slipped into that at that time, and I really couldn't think of anything. And I think that's where the disconnect is. It's okay, we can make this happen in a research setting, in a lab, in a clinical environment, but we still don't know how something is making it happen to you when you're just out in the real world. Well, is it solar flares? I mean, what is the trigger? And that's really frustrating, because if we could figure it out, people would probably, be going places where they could have more deja vu. It's like, oh,
sure,
it's seismic activity. Woohoo!
With me, it's usually tequila. So
yeah, that's it. I'm thinking, there's another thing that people need to study, because I don't think anybody knows about the effects of alcohol or even drugs. I would think that would probably hamper deja vu, but again, I have not heard of a study. That's really interesting, though. But, I mean, that affects the brain and the brain functioning, and I don't know. It might make it better.
Well, okay, so this may get a little confusing, but is deja vu only something personal to one individual, or can multiple people have the same deja vu experience, like a dual deja vu?
We heard of that. Now, there's not a lot of cases of dual or collective deja vu, but it does happen. And when that happens, to me, I mean, when it happens to one person, fine. When it happens to more than one person, though, you are really sort of getting far, far away from the very clinical explanations, such as, the person's brain is having a little glitch, or one of the theories was that the one eye is perceiving information just a nanosecond before the other eye, and that theory went out the window when it was shown that people with one eye, and even blind people, have deja vu. So, all those clinical explanations kind of get thrown out the window when you have 2 or 3 people experiencing the same thing. So, and I'm not even sure the multiverse or many worlds theory works well there, because then you'd have to say to yourself, well, we're all experiencing an alternate reality or a parallel universe where all 3 of us exist doing the same thing right now in both universes. That's really mind-blowing. But it's kind of like, how else do you explain it? Yeah, but it's very rare.
If I may interject a little bit here, if you are having a deja vu experience, and if you take into account the many worlds theory, the parallel dimensions and universes, you're experiencing a deja vu experience. You could be with someone, with your dog, with a person, and right then and there, the moment comes that you are now experiencing deja vu. You're with another person. So if we are in a parallel universe and it is happening at the same time, wouldn't that mean that other person or that other dog
is there too?
is there too? So wouldn't it be then technically a sort of dual deja vu?
Yeah, and that's kind of what I think, and that's what I lean towards. It's rare. And so if you think of that theory, it should happen that we have dual or collective or multiple deja vu more often, because we spend so much time with other people. But we didn't hear about a lot of, we heard just about a handful of episodes of people reporting that. But that absolutely makes sense. And I think it's just, for some reason, if you think about it, doesn't deja vu happen to you at the most trivial of times? Like
yes.
You're walking down the street, or you're talking to a friend over a beer, or
exactly.
you're looking in a store window. It's like you would think that maybe it would happen when you're proposing to your girlfriend, or you're just about to get in a car accident. Really intense times to the brain, but it doesn't. It almost happens at times when the brain is almost on autopilot, just kind of doing its thing, not really working too hard. Like I said, a lot of people, when they're exhausted, have deja vu, and I think it's because, again, the brain's not working very hard. So there's just all these really interesting and intriguing little pieces to this puzzle. And I think if we can figure out what this is and what's triggering it, we might also be able to figure out what triggers people to be able to remote view, psychic abilities, to perceive a ghost when the person standing next to you doesn't see a darn thing. I think we're talking about environmental influences on the brain and on our bodies that cause us to have these paranormal experiences.
Can I just ask a real quick question, Anthony? Marie,
sure.
You mentioned like car crashes. Why is it that when it's just something that I just thought about, like every time that I've been involved in like a fender bender or something like that, or not to say that I've been in an accident, it always seems like all of a sudden once it starts to happen, it goes into slow motion.
Right.
Like the actual event slows down, and you can see it. You can see it, and it's not so much a deja vu experience, but it's almost like a time experience.
Right, it's a time anomaly. It's called time dilation of the brain, believe it or not. And Larry and I wrote about this extensively in our new book, which is about time travel and the anomalies of time. And here's the cool thing that we found out. There has been research into that, because apparently that also happens to people on the out who are at war on the battlefield, or people in law enforcement when they've a criminal puts a gun to their head, or they're involved in a shooting, some very dangerous situation. So many people, when they have car accidents, report that. And what we found is that it's actually a mechanism of the brain. It's a survival mechanism. What it does is it gives you the opportunity. It slows down all of the functioning of the brain and literally shuts off the analysis and all of the stuff that busies the brain and keeps it going very quickly. It slows everything down to give you the opportunity to go into fight or flight mode, whichever one would more assure your survival. So, for example, when you're in a car accident and time is slowing down, it's the brain's way of giving you that extra time to figure out, oh my God, should I turn the wheel this way, or can I jump out of the car, or let me brace myself for impact. And in law enforcement, it allows police to say, okay, it almost like buys them a little extra time to figure out how they're going to survive in a situation.
Mm-hmm.
So it's absolutely fascinating, because, see, the exact opposite can happen to you, too, when you're doing something you really, really love. And, for me, sometimes when I'm writing, I will be so into it that I thought, I'm thinking, oh, wow, I've been writing for an hour. And then I look up and it's like 3 or 4 hours have gone by. So it's just our brain's way of sort of adjusting itself to what's happening. Either, something where it just sort of lets go of time, or it buys us more time if we need it for survival. Our brains are so cool, I swear.
It's so cool, but yet so complex.
They are, and how often do we ignore things like that?
I know. We actually have a caller on the line that I believe has a question. Area code 989. Hello, you're on the air with Anthony, Lucy, and Marie.
Wow, that was fast. Hi, guys. It's Noah.
Hi, Noah.
Oh, hey, Noah. How are you?
Good. I'm very excited about this topic because I have a lot of questions, and I've had experiences before in the past where, especially when I was younger, as you were mentioning earlier, as a kid, where it was very cut and dry deja vu. There was no weird sensation that came with it. But I find as I age, there's a bit of a weirdness that comes with it where it isn't necessarily a pleasant thing.
Yeah, it's kind of disturbing.
I don't like the feeling. It's almost like, as the three of you were discussing, a heightened sense of awareness hits you. Mm-hmm. Time slows down. It's the same feeling that I would have when my body's having a fight or flight response.
Exactly. It's like an adrenaline
kick in
or hypervigilance. Yeah.
Right. I become hypervigilant. My hearing becomes really sharp, and I'm not sure why that is. I don't know if we're taught to be afraid of it, or if my brain's just fighting it. But I've come to where I associate that almost negatively, and I wish it wasn't that way. And I was wondering if your guest had any insight into that.
I think we have this sort of built-in fear of losing control when something happens that we don't really understand. Because I know I've had that too. If I have deja vu, once I realize what's happening, there's almost a little bit of a panic, like, oh my God, is this going to stop? Or is it going to keep going and get worse and I'm going to lose my mind? I think there might be a little bit of an element of wanting to stay in control of what our minds are doing. But it could also be that deja vu is happening to us for a reason and we don't really know why. That's one of the other things. A lot of the people that I talked to, after a while, some people said that they had so much deja vu, they started to pay attention to synchronicities that might occur at or around the time of the deja vu, and they noticed that they were more alert and more aware to more synchronicities, to, chance encounters and meetings with people. And I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. So maybe there is a purpose to deja vu. Maybe it's like when you're on Facebook and you poke somebody, it's like a wake-up call or a universal poke to pay attention to something. This is an important event here, so pay attention. But it is funny how many people do kind of feel like, oh, I don't like this. It just gives you sort of a negative, fearful sense. Some people say a sense of foreboding. Although I never heard of anybody who had deja vu and had something really bad happen. But it's just, I don't know, I think it might be that feeling like you might be slipping between two worlds.
And you know what? Your explanation makes complete sense, and I appreciate that, because it really could be. And I'll, when it does happen, and it's not nearly as frequent, but when it does happen, I will definitely pay closer attention and see if
and go with it. See if you can make it last. Take out some data.
Write it out.
I know. Write it out, baby. No, but really, I have heard a lot of people say, now, I haven't had deja vu since I wrote the book. And I used to have it all the time. Now figure that one out. But I always feel like when something like that happens, stay alert to whatever happens afterwards, and who knows? It could be your brain trying to tell you something.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Great. Thank you, Noah. Thank you for calling in.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Noah.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Now, cryptamnesia, for those of you who don't know, it's the unconscious recollection of material that sometimes spontaneously rises to consciousness as memory. Learned information is never really forgotten, but instead stored away in the brain. When similar occurrences invokes the need for the knowledge learned in the past, not only we remember it now, leading to the feeling of familiarity. Could this be happening during a deja vu case? We're just remembering something we unconsciously sort of stored away for another time or from another time?
It could in some deja vu instances. The problem is when you have somebody who has a deja vu event that's locational, or we call them geographics, where they're in a particular location and they can suddenly remember the area street for street, but they've never been there. I mean, they know they've never been there. And then also, again, if somebody has a precognitive sense of, you could have deja vu and have a sense that something really awful is going to happen. Someone's going to get in a car accident up 3 streets, and then, it happens 10 minutes later. I mean, those kind of things are not information stored in the brain. I think some deja vu could be, but I don't think it explains it all. And I also know that when I have deja vu, one of the things that I think is really, really interesting is that I can predict the words that are going to come out of the person's mouth that I'm with right before they come out. Now, that's a little bit of a precognitive element. There's a little bit of time distortion there where I am able to sort of look in the future for a fraction of a second and know what that person is going to say or do before they actually do. So I don't know that explains all of it, but it certainly could explain some people that just have a very vague or a very straight deja vu experience that doesn't have a whole lot of bells and whistles to go along with it.
You may laugh at this, but
I don't laugh at anything.
Okay. But I sort of have always thought this, and it was kind of a joke, and I would say it as a joke, to explain possibly what deja vu meant. And it first started off as sort of explaining it to myself when I was younger. And I guess now that I'm older and I've, been within the paranormal field, it sort of is starting to make a little bit of sense. But I'm going to say this anyway. What I had always thought of deja vu was sort of like a do-over button in a person's life. So where we sort of unconsciously are able to go back in time and start over for whatever reason. If we made a mistake, if we did something wrong, if something didn't work out as planned within our own life. And going back in time is this now deja vu point or this trigger that's happening. And we're sort of starting at square one at this point in our life again. And that experience is overlapping again.
Ooh,
and we're experiencing it for the second time, and we're continuing our life over again. Now that may sound far-fetched, but I've always thought that
it kind of buys into the whole idea of alternate timelines, alternate parallel universes. That if you go back in time to fix something, you're obviously going into a different timeline because you're not going to be able to fix something in this timeline and have the present end up the same. But what if you're going back and fixing something and it immediately branches off into another timeline, another universe, which of course is the multiverse theory. And then deja vu is, like you said, it's just sort of a pinpoint experience where for just those 10 or 15 seconds you're caught between both of them before you integrate and go along in one, where your conscious awareness goes along. Yeah, I mean, I like that idea, and there's no reason why it can't be possible. That's what it feels like. There's no way to prove that, obviously, but it feels that way when you have the experience, like the two parts of you are integrating back into one, and for just those few seconds, you're split. You exist in two different realities.
Yeah, because I've never been able to control when I'm experiencing deja vu. I've never had that ability, and so it just happens in my body. Yeah. Right, and so my mind is just letting it happen, and it goes, and I recognize it at that moment for however long it's going on for. And I've noticed what I've done sort of after, and I've had many, many experiences with deja vu. Afterwards, I would try to keep a log or sort of a mental log of what happens afterwards. And I've always noticed and this is just for myself, my own case, that after that has happened, it sort of has been not good luck, but good things have happened. And so, again, this is sort of like my theory coming into reality a little bit, that, this is the do-over point, and now it's sort of going well, It's sort of on a good path
alignment.
now.
You adjusted your alignment.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that.
Exactly.
And it's good that you're taking
chiropractic
note of what's
for the
going
brain.
On. Yeah. Oh,
right.
See, there you go. But see, what's so good is that you're taking note of what happens afterwards. And I think if everybody did that, or if more people did, we would know so much more about what's going on. And I really think too, you've suddenly, when you have deja vu, your awareness has changed. Your consciousness has been altered. And you can make that into something positive by continuing to sort of look around from an altered point of view or a higher point of view. And like you said, if you're adjusting or aligning something, and maybe deja vu is just that final lock-in, where you click, everything clicks into alignment, and then you go forward and you have a lot of good things happen, a lot of synchronicities, good luck, what have you. Yeah, I wish more people would take notice of it. Like I said, we trivialize deja vu, and we probably shouldn't.
I agree.
Marie, talking about the trigger points, okay, is deja vu directly related to the five senses and our surroundings, or do you think it's something that's created internally in our conscious and totally isolated from any outside stimulus?
I would think that it has to have some outside stimulus because, well, maybe not necessarily. I mean, the brain could be stimulated by its own workings. In other words, certain chemical releases in the brain could trigger that part of the brain to have deja vu. But I'm a little more inclined to think that there's something environmentally happening because, in clinical settings, you put the electrodes on and you stimulate someone's temporal lobe with a little bit of an electrical impulse. So my feeling is, okay, what's going on environmentally that might be doing that? Is it something in the electromagnetic field? Is it an anomaly? I joked about solar activity, but maybe if there's a little increase in solar activity, do more people have deja vu? Seismic activity? There could be so many different factors in the environment that we're not even aware of that are playing on our bodies to trigger deja vu. So it could be either one. It could be a totally internal trigger. Certain chemicals are floating around and they just are at the right balance of serotonin and what have you, and boom, you have deja vu, or it's an external environmental influence. So, and those are the things that remain to be seen out in the real world. I don't think we can figure that out in a clinical setting, because in a clinical setting, you're being zapped with electrodes. That's not going to happen out there when you're having lunch with your friend.
Right.
But that's a great question. I mean, yeah, it very well could be that the brain is, something in the brain triggers it, just some kind of neural activity.
Oh, Marie, we have another caller in the queue. Can we take another caller right now?
Sure.
Okay. Area code 316. Hi, you're on the air with Anthony, Lucy, and Marie.
Area code 316. Hi.
Caller, lower your computer.
I'm trying to.
Technology.
Okay, here we are. This is Mary Magdalene.
Hi, Mary.
Hi, Mary.
How are you guys?
Hiya.
Fine.
Good. What's your question?
Okay. One, I don't know if this makes me crazier than normal crazy, but I enjoy my deja vu.
Well, good.
Because I do get that heightened sense of awareness.
Right.
And then it's usually by smell. And sometimes it's so strong that I can almost see the hay growing in the field, what that property looked like before I got there, many agos. I love it, and I do try to follow it through to see where it leads, because if it's a bad outcome, actually I think that might be my guardian angel a way of saying, hey, don't go there.
Right,
go back the other way.
Like a warning.
Yeah,
exactly.
But it doesn't feel bad. But I'm very open to it, but if I don't like how it plays out, then I keep that in my mind.
Right.
So
that's
what I wanted to say, but I also think there is something to the alternate reality thing where you're just walking along one day and, oops, you hit a spot where they cross, but I don't know anything about that. So.
What's funny, there's so many different kinds of deja vu. So when you talk about smell, that's one of the different kinds. There's deja vu where it's you hear something or you taste something, you dream something, you read something. There's all these different categories. So for you, smell is the trigger.
Well, now what would you say about, like, I've had them, as has another person in the room, where I've had a dream, and then I've had a dream, and then while I'm going through my day, and it doesn't even have to be the same day, but something will happen that was in the dream, And so you start kind of holding on to it to see how it plays out. But then I don't know how to explain that. Is there something like that?
It's called Deja Vu, and it means already dreamed. And that's exactly it. You sort of have a deja vu, but rather than have a deja vu of something that you're actually doing, like saying talking to a friend, the deja vu event involves revisiting the dream. So yeah, that's one of the categories. We found all kinds of categories. I mean, they really get into this deja vu stuff with the researchers and putting it in all to these different categories and giving each one a different name. And I mean, I was kind of shocked that they gave this much attention to deja vu. It really is, I think it's a gateway experience. In other words, I think it's a experience that opens you up to other things happening that need to be paid attention to. And in your case, you know, you say you like having it, you feel good that it's kind of warning you or giving you information that you need to know, like a guardian angel might, or intuition. And that's a good thing. I mean, that's something that helps us function and could even help with our survival.
I haven't even thought of it that way. How good are the sources? Do you trust the sources that have given you all of this information about deja vu? I mean, did it look like they really went through the ringers trying to get all this information, or do you think that it's something that they just sort of, hey, sounds good?
You know, these are brilliant minds that are doing this research. You know, a lot of people in the field of psychology, neurology, neurobiology, and I think they really want to understand what it is. And
Okay. I just wanted to know if you trust it, because I want to read the book. The book has intrigued me none other.
I think you'll be surprised. There are some major deja vu research centers that are being run by people that also have, you know, brilliant scientific backgrounds, but they're very open to, I would say, some of the more metaphysical aspects of what deja vu might be, like, you know, visiting yourself in another universe or another reality. So
now,
it's really interesting.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Would it be in the same category where, like, when I'm having a dream, and especially a horrible dream, I can stop the dream, start it from the beginning until I get the ending I want, no matter how many times it takes?
That's
dreaming.
We talk about that in the book, too. There's a whole chapter on dreaming, and what you're doing is lucid dreaming, where you are able to control the outcome of your dreams.
Well, it takes 2 or 3 times of stopping it and restarting it, so I don't have control of it. But
right.
But I don't give up until I get the results I want.
Right. There are people that can lucid dream at will, and it takes a lot of practice. I have it by accident, but no, that's a whole different thing. But it is also a very intriguing anomaly of the human mind, that we can dream and control the outcomes.
Well, it's almost like I'm not going to give up until I get what I want, so the universe is saying, just give her what she wants and make her go away.
Let her dream what she wants. Come on. Can it be that bad?
Well, I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for
Thank
calling.
you. Have a good night.
You too, and I'm going to stay on for the rest of the show.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mary.
Okay. And, Marie, we have another caller. This one, he went away. Okay.
Oh,
well, I guess we don't.
Yeah, deja vu. And said you already answered my question.
Well, you know what? I do have a question. You know, talking about all the stimulus and stuff like that, so do you believe that we can control the deja vu experience and very possibly gather more memory information, or, you know, we did touch on it a little bit, extend the time? Do you think this is possible?
I do. I think it's really an individual thing. Like this woman who called, she can do it to some extent. Other people, just it happens. They have no control over it. And I think it's like, you know, the same thing with dreaming, with lucid dreaming. Some people are really good at it, and others have never been able to do it. And I think it's just a skill that, you know, with practice maybe you can. Or it's like singing. Everybody can sing, but not everybody can sing well. I think right now most of the control when it comes to deja vu comes from the clinical research, because they can control the amount of time that the brain is being stimulated. Whereas when we're out in the regular world, we never know when deja vu is coming, and we never know how long it's going to last. It just sort of hits us and then passes on, and we're sort of standing there with our mouths open. So I think it's individual. I think certain people probably can control it more than others.
Okay. Well, you know what, Marie? Can I just ask, what new things do you have coming up that we can look out for as far as books or projects?
Well, Larry Flaxman and I, we just had a book come out last month called This Book is from the Future, A Journey Through Portals, Relativity, Wormholes, and Other Adventures in Time Travel. It's all about time and time travel, really fascinating stuff. And I will be speaking at a couple of events and doing a lot of radio and things. And it's all on my website, which is mariedjones.com. And my website with Larry Flaxman is Para Explorers, P-A-R-A, paraexplorers.com. So we stay really busy. So, people can find us on Facebook and Twitter and see what we're doing.
Are you going to take some time for relaxation, vacation?
Well, I'm actually waiting to hear on another book that my agent is making a deal for. But what will happen is the next couple of months I'll be really crazy, and then hopefully around the holidays I'll just be writing a book and not doing, well, maybe working on two things.
Gosh,
I just can't do it.
There you
sorry.
go.
See, for me, calming down and taking a break is working on one or two projects instead of 3 or 4. But usually around the holidays I try to plan things out so that I can have some downtime, because I'm a single mom. I have an 11-year-old son, and we want to have some downtime.
Wow.
So
You're amazing.
Amazing. Our caller's back. Do you want to take the call here? Let's see. We're going to area code 804. Hi. You're on the air with Anthony, Lucy, and Marie. Hello?
Hi, this is Jazz. Evidence.
Hi, Jess.
Hi.
This is probably strange. My deja vu happened with a whole room full of in-laws, ex-in-laws, back when the show, what was the little guy that always said
Tip
the
of the tongue syndrome, see?
I can't think of the name of the show, but anyway, I'm sitting next to my sister-in-law. The first airing of this show, never been on TV before except for advertisement. And she and I both knew how that show was going to end.
How funny.
And the whole room was saying, yeah, I mean, everybody in the room was saying, you've seen it before. How can we see it before when it's never been on TV?
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, that is the weirdest deja vu I have ever had. I have had experience when I was a teenager. The first time I was, standing with a girlfriend of mine, and we both had the same deja vu. I can't remember that incident, but I do remember who I was with and that it did happen. And other ones, it's just been, fleeting. Nothing big.
Yeah, they're
but the one about the show, I mean, hello? I mean, that's not a dream. That's not, how does that fit in?
You went into another timeline that was, an hour ahead of the one that you really exist in, so you had already seen the show. I mean, it really could be that. It could be that our consciousness has the ability to be in two different timelines. Right, that somebody else. And that makes me think, too, that there are things going on with us physiologically that maybe two people have very similar, brain chemicals or hormones or whatever, where
scary.
They both are triggered at the same time. And it could be that more women experience it than men.
Could it also
be
Island.
Okay.
Could it also be possibly? I don't know if you were actually, Jess, if you were actually feeling an experience, or was it just knowing the show itself and what the outcome and the storyline was going to be?
We knew the exact everything that we were saying. Everybody was getting mad at us because we were saying what was going to happen next. Both of us. We knew exactly from one moment to the end of the show what was going to happen.
And that could be a precognitive experience where both of you just had
or we were tuned into the producer.
Yeah, or in another life, in your parallel life, you were TV writers for that show. knows? That sounds like a precognitive where you guys both had a little glimpse into the future, and I think that's funny. Fantasy Island of all shows.
Really.
Jess, thank you so much for calling, darling.
Thank you.
Excuse me?
Thank you so much
Thank
for calling.
Thanks, Jess. Now, Marie, could that be also sort of like a psychic experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in that case, I think when you have deja vu, it feels a very specific way. But sometimes even when you have a psychic experience, you just feel like you're out of your body a little bit. You're just sort of separated from your physicality. So it could be difficult to tell whether or not you're having a psychic event or precognition or deja vu. I think it all just involves sort of separating from the physical and being more aware in your consciousness of another reality.
Right.
Okay.
Well,
you know what, Marie?
No, go ahead, Lucy. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Lucy.
Ladies first. Touching on the psychic.
Yes, ladies first.
The deja vu that they both experience and stuff like that. The psychic experience that intrigues me. I really like the thought of the parallel worlds, but is it possible, too, that this deja vu is like maybe a psychic connection between people, which could possibly explain the dual deja vu?
Right. It could be, and I think it might, it could be where you somehow are connected to another person's awareness or consciousness or timeline. And I think, just for those 10, 15 seconds or however long it lasts, the two of you are sort of operating on the same wavelengths, and then it just, goes back to normal where you're vibrating at your wavelength and they're vibrating at theirs. I mean, it could be a lot of different things, but it definitely, deja vu has a certain feeling that I think most people recognize. Just that eerie sense of kind of, just being in two places at once, just being, rising up out of your body a little bit.
Well, your website is, actually, I'm sorry?
Did you have another question, Anthony?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to give out Marie's website. It was Para Explorers, that's P-A-R-A, explorers.com, and mariedjones.com. And and your new book, which it's out already, right? Currently, this book is from the future. That's out already?
Right. Yeah, it came out in late July.
Okay, great. What sort of sums up that book? What, if you could, in a sentence or two, what could readers expect from reading it?
It is everything. It's everything you've always wanted to know about time travel, but were afraid to ask. How's that?
Okay.
We cover everything: time travel conspiracies, mental time travel, time itself. How we don't even know a lot about time. Just everything involving time and time travel.
Well, I've read your previous books, one in particular, the 1111 phenomenon, which I found fascinating. And again, all of your books are sort of like these little mini encyclopedias. You express the views from every angle. You bring up tons and tons of research. And I'm amazed at how you and Larry do this. And again, like I said before, bring forth the information so that the readers make up their own minds. And it is amazing. And if I can expect from your other books in this new book here, I guarantee you it's going to be a bestseller. I'm excited to actually go buy it.
Yeah, we do like to give people their money's worth. I mean, that's really important to us as writers. So.
Well, Marie, you know what? All of that sounds so exciting. And I want to thank you. We want to thank you so much for coming on the show tonight and for our listeners. And if you want to know more about Marie and read her dozens of amazing books, go to her website, themariedjones.com, and you can find her on Facebook as well as on Amazon.com.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. Great
Thanks,
conversation.
Marie.
Thanks,
Thanks so much.
You know, we wish you great
we
success.
Wish you
Say hello to
Larry.
Yeah,
Come back on sometime. Take care, guys.
Yeah, say hello to Larry for us, too.
I will. And you know, I'll come back on. We can talk time travel next time.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Great. Thank you, Marie.
Bye-bye.
Have a great weekend.
You too.
Bye-bye.
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 Okay. So that is Marie D. Jones, the Deja Vu Enigma. Lucy, have you recently ever had a deja vu experience?
You know what? It's been a while since I've had it, and this is going back to like what she was saying about the perception and stuff like that. Sometimes I really don't realize I've had it until after it happens. So it has been a while, you know, and it could be how she was saying, as you get older, the frequency slows down. So yeah, I've noticed that too. I used to have it a lot when I was younger, and it just used to freak me out, like Noah was saying. Sort of had that bad connotation to it. But as I got older, it sort of intrigued me more. I don't know if it's because us getting involved more in the paranormal, you are sort of searching for that truth. And so when anything paranormal, what I think is paranormal, happens to you, you're sort of self-investigating it. But what was funny was, we've talked about having Marie on the show for a while now, and earlier this week I actually had a deja vu experience. And, she mentioned earlier in the show that it usually happens when there's, not a big event that goes on. This deja vu experience is not anything big. It could just be you saying hello to a friend, or you picking up a phone and dialing, and all of a sudden you have this deja vu experience. Well, that sort of experience happened to me earlier this week. It actually happened at work, and I was recollecting it happening as a deja vu experience in my mind, and I was letting it sort of play out. And it was more so not so much as who was around me, but it was the mannerisms of the person that I was talking to. And just for an example, she was talking to me in work, and she was pointing down towards something else. And right now I can't even remember what it was, but I remember having that experience. And as she was moving her arm and pointing in that direction, I had that deja vu experience. And I knew it was, and I recognized it at that moment, and I let it happen. And then it probably lasted maybe about 3 seconds, not even 5 seconds maybe, and that was it. And I remembered it at that moment. I don't even remember what she had even told me, what the conversation was about, because I was so much involved in trying to figure out what the deja vu experience was, and how, if I could, control it somehow and just be in that moment, like you were mentioning before, sort of trying to watch it like you're watching a television show. And I realized after that, and that's why I had brought this up to Marie before, that sort of good things started to happen. I mean, it was just odd that last week and early this week, it was just crazy at work, and everything else was just crazy and hectic and chaos. And then once I hit this deja vu experience afterwards, it seemed as though things were sort of falling in place. And it goes back to what I was saying earlier about the theory of possibly this could be sort of a do-over button. It's kind of laughable, but it sort of means something to me. And I don't know if you agree with me on that topic, but it sort of helps explain it, and it helps me get through that moment, or helps me get through the idea of what deja vu could be, because there really are no answers yet to it. Well, my experiences have been so subtle that it's kind of hard for me to equate it to a do-over. My experience is, the one thing that's kind of like the strongest about them is not so much what's being said. I have deja vu about the places or the situations or the room.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like I can feel that I've been here before. I can feel that, we could be sitting in a room talking, and I will know the room already. So that part of it, I think I equate it to possibly the psychic part of it, and maybe the many worlds theory, that maybe I have seen it in an alternate universe. And then again, on something that Mary Magdalene said, it's always been a pleasant feeling. It's always been a very nice, surreal. I haven't experienced any, it hasn't been disturbing to me. It's always been very nice and very calm. It's almost like in the middle of all the chaos that's going around me, I'll have this experience, this deja vu, but then it's like a tiny, tiny, tiny window of calmness. And that's the only way I can explain it. And that's what the majority of my experiences have been like.
You almost get relaxed, and as we were talking about earlier about the time slowing down, it's sort of like an altered state of mind where almost equating it to an out-of-body experience, but not really, and you're still within yourself, but you're really not, and time is doubling and tripling, and so it does give me a sense of relaxation. I don't know if it is because of that internal time slowing down and that feeling that you get from it. But whenever you've had a deja vu experience, have you ever sort of said it out loud? Oh my God, I just had a deja vu moment.
Every single time, and people will turn around and they'll look at me. Yes. Every time it happens, I'm not really conscious of it until after it's done, but I've just experienced that sense of calm, and I will say it out loud, oh my God, deja vu, and I wish I could be aware of it as it's happening. In a way I am, but not to the point where I can stop and say, okay, this is happening, I want to experience this fully. It's almost like after it happens, you just kind of slip into that little calm little window. It's like a tiny little window that just opens up, and you're in this little calm. And like I said, my experiences don't revolve around conversations. They seem to revolve around the situation, the place, or I don't know if it even, it does involve people, but it's mostly with places. Like I know one time that where I had to go like to the DMV, and I went to the State of Illinois building, and this big giant glass building, and I just specifically remember, and I've been there millions of times, so I know I've been there before, but the particular situation that I was in, I remember exactly standing in front of the counter. I remember exactly standing here, and it was almost like my movements. Those movements I had done before. It was a deja vu experience.
I had touched on it earlier when we were interviewing Marie, and you had brought up the question about dual deja vu. As you were just talking now, I'm trying to figure this all out, and there really are no answers. So, any answers that anybody puts forward right now is a good theory that could be tested or should be tested. But if you are, I understand having deja vu experiences about what you were saying, the location, a sort of inanimate object, if you will. I understand that, but if you were having a deja vu experience with someone else, if in the moment when you are standing with your friend, your coworker, a stranger, whatever it may be, and you get the sense that, okay, I just experienced deja vu, I know this has happened before. If you're with someone else, to me, that other person has to have deja vu then, because for you to have that experience with that person, that other person had to have been there, either in that other parallel universe, to be able to experience that previous memory. I'm probably losing about 50 people right now, but if that other person is there with you, they should be experiencing the same thing, possibly at the same time, But I've never experienced that with anybody that I've had deja vu experiences with. So it's kind of weird and strange and completely mind-boggling to think that can happen, and yet I've never experienced, whenever I do have a deja vu experience, that somebody else has said, "Oh my God, I just did too." You know, I mean, if that happened, I think I'd freak out and run. But if you were having it with another person, I would assume that other person would have to have that same experience at the same moment. No?
But see, I'm going to disagree with you on that, because what you're experiencing, let's take the many worlds theory. You're experiencing it, and if this is happening in a parallel reality, and this window opens up, it doesn't necessarily open up for the other person. The other person may not even be aware that they are in this parallel reality, because maybe the two function separately. And for that split second, you get to open the window and you get to see both of them. You're existing in one reality and you're existing in the other. And for that split second, that window opens up and one side remembers that, oh, wow, I have seen this before. See, I tend to lean more towards that theory. So as far as someone else experiencing it at the same time, I don't think that necessarily is the case.
See, now, you just proved my theory and my point about it possibly being a do-over button. It could be that it's my turn to turn back, go back in time, and that moment in time that that you need to go back to start over is the deja vu moment. And so it's you that's causing the deja vu moment, or it's you that's going back to do the do-over, quote-unquote do-over. And so you are experiencing the deja vu moment. You are experiencing that same memory of going back in time because you are the one that's going back to do the do-over, not the person that you're with.
But
have I just lost you?
No. But okay, so
okay.
with your theory, okay, does the experience last that long that it really gives you an opportunity to change what's happening?
You mean me personally?
Yes, with your theory about the do-over.
No, it's not a matter of controlling anything. It's a matter of again, this is just Anthony Agatti's theory. This is not written anywhere. I don't think it's written anywhere. But this is my theory, my sense of trying to make means of this phenomenon. And so you are not controlling it. You're not controlling the deja vu experience. You're just being sort of, okay, everybody has watched Star Trek, okay? You know when they are beamed up and down from the ship? Visualize that as sort of how the path, how you are in your path going back to the deja vu moment. So you've lived, say, 20 years already on Earth, okay? You're 20 years old. And for some reason, something has gone wrong, or your original life path is not going the way that the universe has said it is supposed to be. And automatically, the universe or the parallel dimension has now done that Star Trek move to you to go back to a particular moment where you're able to make the change and branch off, as Marie was saying, possibly, that where you can branch off now and create another future for yourself. It's sort of like, that Back to the Future movie. So you're able to go back to that point, and it's not a matter of controlling that point. It's just a matter of the universe planning you back into that moment, you experiencing it over, because, say, when Marty McFly went back into the DeLorean, you can change the time to go back a couple of seconds before the moment that is supposed to happen. And so possibly we could be going back a couple of seconds prior to where we should be, and we're experiencing the deja vu moment where, okay, my God, this has just happened before, I remember this, and then it stops, and now you continue your life path and go forward. And this, to me, I'm thinking this could sort of happen multiple times until you get your act straight, or, until your life is the way that the universe has said it should be. But again, I'm probably going nuts and crazy, and I'll be committed tomorrow by my family members, but it's just a weird and odd theory that, I'm thinking could be a possibility for it, because I love the paranormal, and, I would love for that to be, is sort of my statement. I would love for that to be what deja vu is.
I get what you're saying, because, like, if that moment happens, just for that split second, it could be like a matter of, instead of turning this corner, instead of going right, I'm going to go left. Is that what you're saying?
Right. It's not me saying that. It's sort of the universe saying, okay, you've went off the beaten path somewhere. Okay, I'm going to stop you right now, and I'm going to bring you back to, 1987. And you were in this spot in 1987 where things sort of had that domino effect in your life, and where it's led to you when you were 20 where you shouldn't be. So I'm going to bring you back to 1987. You're going to start over there again, and you're going to have another chance now to do it over again. And at that moment that you're being brought back is the deja vu moment.
Well, you know what? I think your theory and my theory just proves what Marie had said about it being a very individual experience. And I think it is an individual experience. I think everyone's deja vu is probably maybe the same all around, but I think there are individual little things that make it different for everyone. Like I said, mine center on something completely different. It doesn't center on anything do-overs, because it seems like the same thing happens every single time. Nothing changes, but again, it's the place. I'm in the same spot. I'm standing in the same area. I'm at this end of the counter, or I'm in the car again, sitting next to someone, or sitting. It's so weird, but it's so wonderful. And if I could just open that little window even more, that's what I want. I want to open that little window, and I want to see what's in that parallel universe. And that's going back to my comic book days, like the Superman comics with Bizarro World. On one side, the other reality was like completely the opposite. But that's where I'm coming from. So, yeah, like I said, everything's individual, and I think we all have our separate experiences, but boy, what an experience it is.
Well, Marie D. Jones's book, The Deja Vu Enigma, came out in 2010, and it's not one of her newest books, but we still wanted to have this show on deja vu because I know it's been a topic, and people have been talking about it a lot, and I haven't noticed a lot of radio shows or programs out there talking about it. And so that was one of the reasons why Lucy and I decided to bring this up. Even though our book, is 2 years old, it still is relevant. And even though that there are still, like I had mentioned earlier, there's still clinical studies that are coming out claiming to sort of know what the truth is, or are revealing what could possibly be a deja vu experience. But everything that's in her book is current and up to date. It is theories and ideas and revelations, and she's got stories in here and quotes from famous theorists and psychologists from history that talk about deja vu. I mean, it's just amazing. And it's not only this book. As I was saying before, her other books are awesome as well. And she talks about 2013, after the whole 2012 phenomenon, and her new book, which I'm excited to actually get soon. It's just she and Larry both are amazing authors, and they're not biased. They give you all that information and let you decide, which is the reason why I love her as an author. So, Lucy, if there's nothing else that you wanted to talk about, why don't we bring up the fan of the week?
Okay. I do want to mention something. Mateo in the chat room has just said how cool I am because I read comic books. Thank you very much, Mateo.
two peas in a pod.
Okay, our Paranormal Review Radio Fan of the Week. This week we have Randy Schell from Springboro, Ohio. Randy has joined us, listened to the show. He has been posting on our show page. And just a little bit about Randy. He likes Lincoln Park. He likes Stained, Godsmack. He likes Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures, and, of course, Paranormal Review Radio. Congratulations, Randy. Thank you so much for being a fan.
Yeah, Randy emails me, and we have some really interesting conversations about the paranormal and about past shows, and he's even actually, sort of informed me or informed both of us about the Jeffrey Dahmer house that's up for sale in, I think it's in Ohio, in Akron, Ohio. And so he mentioned it to us and said, hey, maybe you want to sort of investigate that place. And I said to him, if it's a possibility, heck yeah, we would do it. And he lives in the area, so he was going to try and see if that was a possibility for us. So could you imagine Jeffrey Dahmer house, paranormally investigating that place? It's actually supposed to be his childhood home, but it was where one of his first victims was murdered, and I think was buried in the house, in the basement or something like that. But that would be pretty amazing investigation.
What makes it even
more...
So
thank you, Randy.
Thank you, Randy, for that. That's awesome. But what makes this house even more interesting, it seems to be kind of secluded from the pictures that I saw, and it seems to be in kind of like a wooded area, which I think would make it even more creepier and cooler.
Yeah, I'm wondering, because we saw the article, and there is there have been people that have lived in that house, and the gentleman that is selling it right now hasn't mentioned any paranormal activity, but I don't know if that's just a ploy to sell the house. People tend to not say anything like that, so they're able to sell. But I'm curious to talk to the current owner to see if he, off the record, has experienced anything paranormal in there, and maybe could be the reason why he's leaving. Who knows?
Well, and again, too, I wasn't saying that Jeffrey Dahmer was cool. It's just that the fact that if there's a possible connection there, I mean, come on, this is what we live for, is to paranormal investigate. It's just another site that I think it would be truly interesting to go there. The things that I'm learning every place we go.
Right. It's not disrespecting any of the victims or the family. It is seeking the truth. We don't go in and instigate any sort of communication or antagonize, only when we know that the spirit is, evil or bad or whatever. We will only instigate then. But if it is within children or victims of murders, we are more sympathetic and we go in with that sort of tone. So, I just think it would be a really cool thing to do if we did do it, and I know we would do it the right way.
Okay. Anything else, Anthony?
No, I think we've been deja vu'd out. I don't think there's anything else that we can talk about, but it is an interesting topic, and I don't think this is just going to be our one and only show on Deja Vu. I think it is a topic that still does not have an answer for or cannot be fully explained, and so I can profess to everybody right now, I guarantee you we're probably going to have another show on Deja Vu in the near future, and hopefully possibly get some clinical points to this, and as well as paranormal, and maybe have two guests on to see if we can get both views and sort of see who has the better argument or who can explain it better. And again, just like Marie and Larry do with their books, let you guys decide.
But aren't those the best topics, the ones that we don't really come up with a definitive answer? Because that always leaves it open for more conversation.
Yeah, but it's frustrating. I want an answer. You know that.
I know you do.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know what? Wow. I feel like I've done this before. Wait a minute. Oh, yeah, I have. So, you know what? The next time you get that feeling that you have seen, heard, or even, experienced something before, we hope that our guest tonight has given you a bit more insight as to what is happening. We want to thank Marie D. Jones for stopping by and talking about the subject of deja vu. Again, be sure to check out her book, The Deja Vu Enigma, or for that matter, any of her other great books. Tonight's discussion was truly fascinating, and I have been a fan of Marie's books for a while, and tonight's show just added to my admiration of her work. If you've never read any of her books, please, please, please do. You've got to read one. She doesn't write in a textbook fashion. She makes everything really interesting, and it's just amazing, her style of writing. Her and Larry, they crack really, really great subjects.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Lucy, but the 1111 book, the time prompt phenomenon was amazing, and we tried to get her on our show for when we did the 1111 phenomenon. I think it was a couple of months back. But when I had read this book, that's what hooked me on to Marie. And I've since read Deja Vu and PS Science, and her new book is what I want to get, which is This Book is from the Future. I am, and you know me, we actually did a time travel show. Was it like the second or third show that we've ever done?
It was very early on. It was early on.
And we did our own research. We didn't have a guest on at all at that time, and so I would love for her to come back on and maybe we revisit what we had talked about in the beginning about time travel and sort of, lay it all out there and see what Larry and Marie have actually come up with in their new book. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but go ahead, Lucy.
No. That's fine. Like I said, I can't wait for Marie to come back. And again, too, I hope that we can get Larry on. And time travel, yes. That's an awesome subject, and I could see in the chat room that people were really cool. They want to hear about that too. And of course, we always give you what you want. So, let's talk about next week's show. Okay. Now, next week we're going to explore a couple topics that are very close to my heart, and that heart is red. We're going to be looking at the world of Native American hauntings and divination. Mark D. Williams is the founder and creator of the Native American Paranormal Project, along with members of various Native American tribes. They have gone to locations that have been historically known to be inhabited by spirits or unknown entities of the Native American paranormal kind, and they have actually filmed their investigations. In addition to Mark, Barry Hogan will be joining us. Now, Barry is a Cherokee intuitive who has developed his abilities after he suffered a head injury while serving in Iraq. He's going to share his experiences, how his abilities developed, and he's actually going to do some readings for our listeners. So, you know what? It's going to be a very special show for me, and it's going to be a great show. So please don't miss this one. I want to say thank you to all of you. You guys are the best fans in the world, and you prove that each and every week. We really love you all. Anthony, thank you. You really are the best co-host there is. So, until next week. And I mean that. I'm just not saying it. So, until next week, dear friends, have a paranormal week, everyone. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Paranormal Review Radio.